My coworker cheated on me with my boss. I didn't confront them. I gathered proof and sent it anonymously to HR. Guess who lost both their relationship and their job? I work at a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Chicago. It's one of those trendy agencies with open floor plans, kombucha on tap, and mandatory fun team-building events. I've been there for about 3 years, working my way up from junior account coordinator to senior account manager. The pay is decent, the work is challenging, and I genuinely enjoyed my job, keyword being enjoyed. My boyfriend Jake, 29M, started working there about 2 years ago as a graphic designer. We'd actually been dating for 6 months before he got hired, which made things a bit awkward at first, but HR cleared it since we weren't in the same department and had no direct reporting relationship. Most of our coworkers knew we were together, and everyone seemed cool with it. Our boss, Miranda, 35F, is the creative director. She's one of those people who's intimidatingly competent, brilliant at her job, always perfectly put together, with this sharp wit that could either make you feel like the smartest person in the room or completely destroy your self-esteem. I'd always respected her professionally, even if she wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy. Jake and I had been together for almost 3 years total when this whole mess started. We were talking about moving in together, maybe getting engaged soon. I thought we were solid. I thought wrong. The beginning of the end. It started with little things that I should have paid more attention to. Jake began working later and later, claiming Miranda was giving him more high-profile projects. He'd come home exhausted, claiming he'd been grinding on some big campaign. At first, I was proud of him. It seemed like his career was taking off. Then came the business trips. Miranda would suddenly need Jake to accompany her to client meetings in other cities. She values my creative input, he'd say. It seemed plausible enough. Jake is talented, and Miranda had always been demanding of her team. The red flags really started waving when Jake became secretive about his phone. We used to be completely open, passwords shared, phones left lying around, no big deal. Suddenly, he was taking his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. When I jokingly reached for it, he'd snatch it away with some excuse about work confidential stuff. He also started dressing better. New clothes, expensive cologne, hitting the gym religiously. When I complimented his new look, he'd shrug it off. Miranda says presentation is everything in this business. Everything came back to Miranda. The final straw that made me suspicious was when I forgot my laptop at home one morning and swung by the office early to grab some files. It was about 7 a.m., way before anyone usually got in. But there was Miranda's car in the parking lot. And Jake's. When I asked him about it later, he said he'd gotten in early to work on a project and that Miranda happened to be there too. You know how she is about deadlines. But something felt off about how quickly he answered, like he'd prepared for that exact question. The investigation begins. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I began noting when Jake left the apartment and when he came home. I started observing Miranda and Jake's interactions during office meetings. They were subtle, but once you're looking for it, you see everything. The way she'd linger by his desk. How they'd share these little inside jokes during presentations. The way he'd light up whenever she praised his work. One evening, Jake's laptop was open on our kitchen table while he was in the shower. A Slack notification popped up from Miranda. Can't wait for tomorrow, winking face. This was at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. What work thing was happening on Monday that warranted a winky face? That's when I decided to do something I'd never done before. I started investigating. I created a fake email account and began documenting everything. I started taking photos of Jake's schedule, noting when he claimed to be working late versus when he was actually at the office. I began keeping a detailed log of their business trips, cross-referencing them with actual client meetings, which I could verify through our shared work calendar. The breakthrough came when Jake forgot to log out of his personal email on our home computer. I know it was wrong to look, but I was desperate for answers. What I found made me sick. Email confirmations for hotel rooms on nights he claimed to be working late at the office. Receipts for expensive dinners at romantic restaurants during their business trips. Gift purchases, jewelry that I'd never seen. And most damning of all, Google Photos automatically backing up pictures from his phone, including some very intimate selfies of him and Miranda together, building the case. Once I had concrete proof, I faced a choice. I could confront them directly, but what would that accomplish? Jake would just deny everything or gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. Miranda held all the power at work. She could make my life miserable or even get me fired. Instead, I decided to be strategic. If they wanted to play games, I'd play to win. I started researching our company's employee handbook. Turns out, we have very strict policies about relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Miranda was technically Jake's boss, which made their relationship a fireable offense if the company chose to enforce the policy. The handbook specifically mentions that such relationships create conflicts of interest and potential liability issues. I also discovered that Miranda was married. Her husband occasionally came to office events, a nice guy named David who worked in finance. They seemed happy together, or at least they put on a good show. Seeing them together at the company holiday party, knowing what I knew, made me feel sick for him. But I needed more evidence. I needed something that would be impossible for them to deny or explain away. I started volunteering to stay late at the office, claiming I wanted to get ahead on projects. This gave me opportunities to observe their after-hours behavior. I saw them leaving together on multiple occasions when they thought the office was empty. I documented everything: times, dates, witness accounts. The smoking gun came when I accidentally left my laptop charger in the office one evening and had to come back to get it. I used my key card to get in around 8 p.m., and there they were, Miranda and Jake in her office, in a very compromising position. I quickly retreated and came back 30 minutes later, making sure to be loud and obvious about my presence. They both appeared from her office looking disheveled, claiming they'd been reviewing portfolio pieces. I also started befriending Sarah from HR. Not in a manipulative way. Sarah's genuinely cool, and we'd always gotten along. But I began asking casual questions about company policies, theoretical scenarios. What would happen if someone was breaking the relationship policy? How does HR typically handle these situations? Is everything really confidential? Sarah explained that HR takes policy violations very seriously, especially when there's a power imbalance involved. She also mentioned that they always investigate thoroughly and that substantiated claims usually result in termination for both parties, regardless of their value to the company. What ultimately pushed me to action wasn't just the cheating, it was realizing how it was affecting my work and my mental health. I was constantly on edge, second-guessing every interaction with Miranda, wondering if she was treating me differently because of her relationship with my boyfriend. I started having anxiety attacks before meetings. I wasn't sleeping well. I was becoming paranoid and bitter, which isn't who I am. The breaking point came during a team meeting where Miranda announced that Jake was being promoted to senior graphic designer, a position I knew two other, more qualified designers had been hoping for. The way she announced it, the way Jake tried to look surprised, the way she kept praising his exceptional dedication, it was all so transparent once you knew the truth. After the meeting, I heard two of my colleagues talking by the coffee machine. "It's so obvious," one said. "Jake's been getting all the best assignments, all the FaceTime with clients. I wonder what he's doing that we're not." The other replied, "Come on, you know exactly what he's doing." It hit me then. Their affair wasn't just betraying me personally, it was affecting the entire workplace. Other employees were noticing the favoritism. Morale was suffering. People were questioning whether hard work actually mattered, or if you just needed to sleep with the boss to get ahead. That evening, I made my decision. The anonymous report. I spent an entire weekend compiling everything. Photos, receipts, email confirmations, detailed timeline of events. I organized it all into a clear, professional document that read like a private investigator's report. I included copies of relevant company policies and highlighted exactly which rules were being violated. I created an untraceable email account using a VPN and sent everything to HR on a Monday morning. The subject line was simple: policy violation, relationship between supervisor and direct report. The email read, "To whom it may concern, I am writing to report a serious violation of company policy regarding relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. Creative director Miranda Thompson has been engaged in a romantic relationship with senior graphic designer Jake Morrison for approximately 6 months. This relationship violates Section 4.3 of the Employee Handbook regarding conflicts of interest and creates a hostile work environment for other employees who have witnessed preferential treatment of Mr. Morrison, including unmerited promotions and project assignments. I have attached substantial evidence supporting these claims, including photographic proof, financial records, and a detailed timeline of events. All evidence was gathered legally and ethically. This relationship is also affecting team morale and creating questions about fairness and advancement opportunities within the creative department. I am submitting this anonymously due to concerns about retaliation, but I am willing to provide additional information if needed through this secure email account. Please investigate this matter thoroughly. Concerned employee. I hit send at exactly 9 a.m. and then went to the kitchen to make coffee, acting like nothing had happened. The investigation. The next few days were surreal. I had to act normal around both Jake and Miranda while knowing that HR was likely reviewing dozens of photos of them together. Jake seemed his usual self, but I noticed Miranda looked a bit tense during our Tuesday team meeting. By Thursday, Sarah from HR asked to schedule individual meetings with everyone in the creative department. Just routine check-ins, she said, but I could see the concern in her eyes. When she asked to meet with me, I played dumb. Is everything okay? I asked innocently. We're just making sure everyone feels comfortable in their work environment, Sarah replied diplomatically. During my meeting with Sarah, she asked general questions about workplace satisfaction, whether I'd noticed any unusual behaviors or favoritism, if I felt comfortable reporting concerns. I answered honestly, but vaguely, never directly accusing anyone. I think everyone works really hard, I said. Sometimes the project assignments seem a bit inconsistent, but I'm sure there are reasons I don't know about. I could tell from Sarah's questions that they were building a case. She asked specifically about Jake and Miranda's working relationship, about after-hours work, about business trips. Someone else must have corroborated parts of my report. The confrontation. The following Monday, Jake came home unusually early and in a horrible mood. He was pacing around the apartment, muttering about office politics and people who need to mind their own business. Bad day? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. HR is asking all these weird questions, he said. Apparently someone made some kind of complaint about the creative department. Sarah wanted to know about my working relationship with Miranda, about business trips, all this irrelevant stuff. That does sound weird, I agreed. What kind of complaint? I don't know, she wouldn't say. But it's obvious someone has it out for Miranda. Probably one of the other designers who's jealous that I got promoted. He was really agitated, running his hands through his hair. This could really mess things up for her. She's worked so hard to build her reputation. I almost laughed at the irony. He was more concerned about Miranda's reputation than our relationship. I'm sure it's nothing, I said. If there's no truth to whatever the complaint is, HR will figure that out. Jake looked at me sharply. Of course there's no truth to it. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, I replied calmly. I'm just saying HR is pretty thorough. They'll investigate properly. The next few days, both Jake and Miranda were obviously stressed. I could see them having hushed conversations by the coffee machine. Miranda looked exhausted, and Jake was jumpy and irritable. The fallout. 2 weeks after I sent the report, Sarah asked Miranda and Jake to meet with her and the VP of Human Resources. An hour later, security was escorting them both to their desks to collect their personal items. The official announcement came that afternoon. Miranda Thompson and Jake Morrison are no longer with the company. We thank them for their contributions and wish them well in their future endeavors. Everyone was shocked. Miranda had been with the company for 7 years and was considered untouchable. Jake had just been promoted. The rumors started immediately. I heard it was embezzlement, one person whispered. Someone told me they were caught using company resources for personal projects, said another. Sarah, to her credit, shut down the speculation quickly. Personnel matters are confidential, she announced to the team. Let's focus on moving forward and maintaining the high standards our clients expect. But I knew people would keep talking. And I was right. Jake called me that evening, devastated. "We need to talk," he said. When he came home, he looked like he'd been crying. "I got fired," he said simply.
What?
"Why?" I asked, though I obviously knew. HR said there was a policy violation. They wouldn't give me details, but apparently someone reported that Miranda and that we were having an inappropriate relationship. I let him struggle with the words. "The thing is," he continued, "someone had photos. Detailed evidence. They knew about business trips, hotel rooms, everything. Someone was watching us for months." "Were you?" I asked quietly. "Having an inappropriate relationship?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw him calculating whether he could still lie his way out of this. "Yes," he finally admitted. "It started about 6 months ago. It wasn't supposed to happen, it just did." 6 months ago, I repeated. "So, right around the time you started working late all the time." He nodded miserably. "And all those business trips?" Another nod. "And the promotion?" "That was legitimate," he said quickly, then caught himself. "I mean, I am good at my job. But yes, being involved with Miranda probably helped." I stood up from the couch where we'd been sitting. "I need you to pack your things and leave." "Babe, please let me explain." "You just did explain," I said calmly. "You cheated on me for 6 months with your boss, let it affect your job performance and workplace fairness, and only admitted it when you got caught. What else is there to explain?" "Who do you think reported us?" he asked suddenly. "Someone had to have been following us, taking pictures. That's psychotic behavior." The irony was incredible. "You're right," I said. "Someone who would systematically document a months-long affair that was violating company policy and hurting other people's careers. That person sounds really unbalanced." He didn't catch the sarcasm. Miranda's meltdown. The next day at work, I heard through the grapevine that Miranda's husband had filed for divorce. Apparently, HR's investigation had uncovered enough evidence that they felt obligated to inform him about the affair. Company policy requires disclosure when marital infidelity is discovered during workplace investigations, something about liability protection. I felt a little bad for David, Miranda's husband, but mostly I felt like justice was being served. I also learned that Miranda had tried to fight the termination, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. But since everything I documented was either in public spaces or legally accessible information like hotel bookings and restaurant receipts, HR's lawyers confirmed the investigation was completely legitimate. Miranda apparently had a complete meltdown in the HR office, screaming about vindictive employees and threatening to sue everyone. Security had to remove her from the building. The aftermath at work. With Miranda gone, the company promoted David Chun, the associate creative director, to fill her position temporarily. David is someone who actually cares about fairness and team morale. One of his first acts was to review recent project assignments and promotions to ensure they were merit-based. The other designers who'd been passed over for Jake's promotion were given opportunities to showcase their work for important clients. Sarah from HR conducted exit interviews with several people who'd worked under Miranda to understand if there had been other favoritism issues. It became clear that the Jake situation wasn't isolated. Miranda had a history of playing favorites, though apparently I was the only one who'd actually gathered evidence and reported it. 3 months later, David was officially promoted to creative director, and I was offered a promotion to lead account manager, a position that hadn't even existed before. My new role involves liaising between the creative and account management departments, which is exactly the kind of challenging, cross-functional work I'd been hoping to do. Jake's downward spiral. Jake tried to contact me multiple times over the next few months. First, he was angry, demanding to know if I was the one who ruined his life. When I didn't respond, he switched to desperate apologies, promising he'd never cheat again, begging for another chance. Through mutual friends, I heard that he was having trouble finding new work. The marketing world in Chicago is smaller than you'd think, and word gets around. He eventually had to take a junior position at a much smaller agency for significantly less money. Miranda, meanwhile, apparently tried to start her own consulting business, but her reputation had taken such a hit that she struggled to find clients. Last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown to work for her family's real estate business. The unexpected consequences. About 6 months after the whole mess, Sarah from HR and I were having coffee when she brought up the anonymous report. "You know," she said carefully, "that anonymous complaint was the most thorough and professionally prepared report I've ever seen. Whoever submitted it really understood workplace policy and documentation standards." I kept my face neutral. "Really? That's interesting." "The thing is," Sarah continued, "it wasn't just about the affair. The person who wrote it clearly cared about workplace fairness and team morale. They documented how the favoritism was affecting other employees, how it was creating ethical issues beyond just the personal relationship." "Sounds like they really thought it through," I said. "They did. And honestly, it made me realize we need better systems for people to report concerns. We've started doing more regular check-ins with teams, more anonymous feedback opportunities. That report changed how we approach workplace culture issues." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's great that something positive came out of whatever the situation was." Sarah smiled. "You know, I think the person who wrote that report probably saved several people's careers in the long run. The creative department is so much healthier now." Looking back, I'm proud of how I handled the situation, but I'm also aware that it changed me. I learned that I'm capable of being much more strategic and patient than I ever thought possible. I also learned that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the nice thing to do. I've been in therapy since all this happened, not because I regret my actions, but because I wanted to understand why I chose investigation over confrontation. My therapist says I have a strong sense of justice, but that I also tend to avoid conflict. The anonymous report allowed me to pursue justice without direct confrontation, which felt safer emotionally. I've also learned to trust my instincts more. All those little red flags I initially ignored, they were spot on. I won't make that mistake again. It took me about 8 months to feel ready to date again. When I did start putting myself out there, I was much more aware of potential red flags. Secretive behavior, inconsistent stories, phone guarding, all immediate deal breakers. I'm currently seeing someone new, Alex, who works in a completely different industry, and I've been upfront about my experience. "I have trust issues for good reason," I told him early on, "and I will pay attention to your actions more than your words." Alex appreciated the honesty, and he's been consistently transparent about his life, his schedule, his friendships. It's refreshing to be with someone who doesn't make me feel like I need to be a detective. People always ask if I feel bad about getting Jake and Miranda fired, about ruining their lives. Here's the thing, I didn't ruin anything. They made their choices. They decided to have an affair. They decided to violate company policy. They decided to create a hostile work environment through favoritism and unfair treatment. All I did was document their choices and report policy violations to the appropriate department. HR made the decision to terminate them based on the evidence and their own investigation. If anything, I protected other employees from continued unfair treatment. I protected the company from potential lawsuits about discrimination and favoritism. And I protected myself from further emotional manipulation. Would I do it again? Absolutely. The only thing I'd do differently is start documenting sooner. About a year after everything went down, I got a LinkedIn message from David, Miranda's ex-husband. He thanked me. Apparently he'd figured out I was behind the anonymous report, though I never confirmed it. "I don't know who you are," he wrote, "but I wanted you to know that finding out about Miranda's affair was the best thing that could have happened to me. I'd been unhappy for years, but felt trapped. Having concrete evidence made the divorce straightforward, and I'm happier now than I've been in a decade. So thank you, whoever you are." That message made me cry. Not sad tears, but relieved tears. It confirmed that speaking up had been the right thing to do, not just for me, but for multiple people who were being hurt by Jake and Miranda's deception. I still work at the same company, and I love my job more than ever. The creative department has a completely different culture now, collaborative, fair, supportive. David Chun is an excellent manager who makes decisions based on merit, not personal relationships. I never did reveal that I was the anonymous reporter, though I suspect Sarah has figured it out. We have a good working relationship, and she occasionally mentions how impressed she was with the concerned employee's professionalism and attention to detail. Jake stopped trying to contact me about 6 months ago. I heard through friends that he's in therapy and working on himself, which I genuinely hope is true. I don't wish him ill. I just wish him away from me. As for Miranda, I occasionally see her Facebook posts. We're not friends, but her profile is public. She seems to be doing okay with the real estate business, and I hope she's learned from the experience. The whole situation taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be patient, be thorough, and let people's actions speak for themselves. I didn't need to scream or confront or make a scene. I just needed to pay attention, document the truth, and trust that the right people would take the right action when presented with facts. And they did. Update, 6 months later. Hey everyone, thanks for all the supportive comments on my original post. I thought I'd share a quick update since a few things have happened. First, Alex and I got engaged. He proposed last month, and yes, I said yes. We've been completely transparent with each other from day one, which has made our relationship incredibly strong. He actually helped me realize how toxic my relationship with Jake had been, beyond just the cheating. Second, I got another promotion at work. I'm now Director of Client Relations, which is basically my dream job. David Chen has been an incredible mentor, and the creative department continues to thrive under his leadership. Finally, and this is the weird part, Jake reached out to me again last week. Not to try to get back together, but to apologize properly. He's apparently been in intensive therapy and wanted to make amends as part of his recovery process. He took full responsibility for his actions, acknowledged how his choices hurt me and others, and didn't ask for anything in return. It was actually a really mature conversation. I don't think we'll ever be friends, but I'm glad he's working on himself. And I'm glad I trusted my instincts and chose documentation over confrontation. It led to the best possible outcome for everyone involved. Sometimes the long game really is the best game.